Okay. That's a picture of Ron Burgundy, by the way, in case you didn't know. And I want to put the first thing out there. Mike King doesn't actually work for anybody. He just pretends like he does. He placates me. He does a really good job of placating though, so it's okay. All right, let's get to this next slide. Where's this? There we go. Okay, I promise this is not a sales presentation, but I want to state the obvious. We do scalable content marketing. That's what we do. But there's a big problem with doing scalable content marketing. You have to find a lot of credible content producers, a lot. Last month we produced 1,250 unique pieces of content. 1,250. In order to do that, you have to have a big content team. So we have a big content team in-house, but we also need a lot of guys on the outside. And that's very difficult to recruit that number of people, especially when you're talking about credible content. So what is credible content? Well, it can mean a lot of things, but to us it means one thing in particular, and there's a good reason for that. And I'm going to read this quote by Eric Schmidt, who's the chairman of Google. Not a big slide quote reader guy, but in this particular example, I think it makes a lot of sense. Within search results, information tied to verified online profiles will be ranked higher than content without such verification. This is chairman of Google. Which will result in most users naturally clicking on the top results. Therefore, the true cost of remaining anonymous then might be irrelevant. Okay. So we need to find writers who are verified with Google, who are part of Google's authorship program at scale. How are we going to do that? This is a case study, by the way. Round one, find these guys any way you can. So what we did was we actually stalked big publishers that we knew use Google authorship, because when we know that they're using Google authorship, we know that those writers have Google Plus profiles, and they're attaching those profiles to those publishers, and therefore they're engaged in this process. So we started with a program called Nerdy Data. It's actually a pretty cool tool. You guys should check it out. You can use this tool for a lot of different things. We used it to find websites that have the rel equal author code in their source code. Basically, this site crawls about 150 million websites, and you can go here and search against HTML code. You can't do that with Google. That's actually really useful in a lot of cases. As an example, if you wanted to compete against Google Maps, which is not a good idea, I don't recommend getting in that business, but if you did, you could use this tool to find the 55,000 websites that they know about that use the Google Maps API. So you can do a lot of competitor snooping, as an example. We used it to find authors. We also use Bleco to find publishers that use that rel author code, the Google rel author code. And Bleco has a web grep of these rel equal authors. Bleco has a lot of different tools that you can leverage, so you should check that out. And ultimately, we ended up with a huge list of authors. We had, I don't know, 100,000 authors probably. But having 100,000 authors doesn't really help when you also need to know how much do they, what is their proliferation across the internet. When it comes to credible content, it's all about who's king in the authorship world. Ultimately, you want authors writing on your website that are published in other places, published on popular websites. As Google continues to expand this authorship program and rank content for credible authors better than other authors, that becomes more important than anything else. And that's what we're trying to get to. Only problem is that round one didn't really give us the proliferation requirement that we needed. So necessity is the mother of invention. What does that mean? It means you have a problem, you need to find a way to solve that solution. So let's take another step at this. Round two, let's do it again, only with a lot more scale. So this is where Chris Lee comes in to play. Unfortunately, Chris Lee works for Conductor, not iAcquire. We're working on that on the side. Right, Chris? Just kidding. Not really, but kind of. Okay, just kidding. So we tapped into big data. And big data allows you to get access to information at a scale that really has only been around for a few years. You haven't been able to get access to this type of data. The reason I'm telling you this is that you too can get access to big data. And there's a lot of different places you can get big data from. One of them is called the Common Crawl. The Common Crawl is the largest database of web pages and websites developed by a community which is open source. There's 41 million domains, there's about 200 plus terabytes of information. This is like a mini Google, but kind of a big Google too, but not that big, but pretty big. And you can get access to it for free. And you can search it in a lot of different ways. You don't have to just download 200 terabytes, you can actually download pieces of information. So you should go to the Common Crawl and check it out. We use that as a seed source to find unique domain names on the internet. And then we also use GNIP. GNIP is probably the biggest fire hose aggregator on the internet. What's a fire hose? A fire hose is when a data provider like Twitter gives you full access to every piece of data that they generate at all times in real time. So GNIP, DataSift, a few other guys, they have access to the Twitter fire hose, the Tumblr fire hose, the WordPress fire hose, the Disqus fire hose. All these different fire hoses, basically they have access to all this data. They're the biggest big data aggregator I know of. And we use them to find new websites in real time and find new authors in real time. You can use GNIP in a lot of different ways. You can actually, if you wanted to make a presentation internally to your company about why they should invest in social media, as an example, you could pull up 2 years of historical tweets about your company, or any keyword for that matter, through GNIP. But you can do way more things than that, so it's worth checking out. So we use GNIP and the Common Crawl to create a huge index of websites. I think there's about 2 million websites that we ended up keeping that we felt were really popular. Then we used Amazon Cloud Search, which you can use also. It's actually really cheap, to index a big chunk of that content and create essentially a graph of authors. We took that graph of authors, we took a tool called Giraffe. It's an algorithm, it was actually developed by Apache, it's used by Facebook. It's like PageRank basically, because we needed to rank the authors. We don't care about we found over 100,000 great authors. I want to know who are the best authors in technology that have the biggest clout in Google. Google does not publish author rank. Basically, again, author rank is people page rank. It's not being published anywhere. So we needed to know that information because it doesn't exist. So what happened? So we developed what we're calling the voice graph and what we're calling voice rank. Voice graph is our proprietary database of authors on the internet, where they write content, how often they write content on those websites, and how essentially big they are online. So voice rank takes all that information. Oh, we got a double T, I'm sorry about that. Voice rank takes all that information and creates a score, like a page rank. I see Cindy laughing at us. So now we can judge people on the premise of how credible they are. That's what we call credible content. So I want writers on my site that are voice ranked of 5 and higher. Think about it like PageRank. So the whole point here, guys, is there's some really cool things you can do with big data. Tap into those tools, you can develop that scale, and that's it. Follow iAcquire, follow Clear Voice. We're going to release voice rank to the public. You can go there, put your name in, put your Google Plus profile in, we'll tell you how credible you are on the internet. Stay classy, Manhattan.